Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm Kevin Hoyt and we're continuing our public discussion for Bennington on school safety. And today I've got Colleen Harrington, thanks for joining me, and Jason Lilly. And we've got a couple things we're going to talk about education. And it's coming off this public school safety meeting that we just had last week at the Art Center, the Liberal Arts Center. It's supposed to be a public forum about school safety. And Jason, I saw you there. Well,
yes.
What did you think of that meeting in general? How was it, a safety meeting?
I really don't think it met the focus of what it was supposed to be for. I mean, I went there seeing what the school was doing, and the state and the Department of Mental Health's support to the school was, and school safety. And I think it took a drastic turn an hour into it, and you could see that it was more of a focus on gun control.
Right, it was a gun rally. That's how I felt about it too. And we did cover safety to, again, the things that we are already doing and we've been doing for the last 20 odd years, right? And really good, by the way. We do have to give credit to the schools, to the police officers and everything. Our schools are safe, right? And they covered that.
Yes.
It's very safe statistically. Colleen, you weren't there. Have you seen it? You saw it on video.
Yeah, I watched it last night, actually.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what's your take? I mean, were you...
Well, halfway through it, I was getting a headache because it was just not what I thought it was going to be about.
Right. Well, that's the same thing. Like I said, I was very disappointed. I don't feel like we covered any ideas. I saw no ideas, proposed ideas, other than gun control.
Right.
And we've quickly determined in the meeting that we didn't want to secure our schools, which again, I don't agree with either. What are your thoughts on that, guys? Go ahead, Colleen.
Well, I wrote on Facebook today that they're already doing that at Mount Anthony. They got an armed resource officer, and the whole school is locked down. You have to get buzzed in with cameras pointing at you.
Right.
So
it's already in effect.
It's already in effect.
It is, and we enjoy that, actually. I'm sure I feel safer with that guard there. And
my daughter's a senior. She feels safe.
Right.
You know, and she wants to take the hunter safety course. But there was that side wasn't covered at all. They had 3 children there that were all anti-gun. And they were kind of regurgitating, it seemed almost like a script.
It was, and that is exactly what I want to talk about today, because for the first time in a long time, I can say those Vermont students were very well schooled, right? They were trained, and not to say that they were actors. I think my sympathy goes out to these kids. This is really who I want to help, right? I want to make school safer. I want to reduce gun violence in the future. And I think they were there with a genuine fear and concern, and they were repeating what they've been taught.
Right.
Right? What the only answer that they know. And I think it's a false narrative, too. I think they have been told a few promises along the lines that this is actually going to help, and I don't agree with that. Jason, you look like you want to say something.
The feeling that I got out of the meeting, I mean, it was great that we had Senator Dick Sears there. There was the Department of Education, Department of Mental Health, State Police. They were represented, and in the end, they did take questions. But in the beginning, when they said, we want you to be respectful of the other side, listen to what they have to say, and we don't want any outbursts, or keep your comments to yourself, and we'll have a question and answers at the end. So we sat there for 2 hours and 5 minutes and listened.
Right.
There was a lot of pro-gun people there, but they took everything in, listened to their side. And the thing that I thought is, okay, I'm sitting here in Bennington. These people representing Bennington, but we don't know anything about Burton and Long Trail. Maybe they don't have the stuff in place that we have at Mount Anthony, but the people that were in the audience were Bennington, and those people were from out of town.
Right.
So we don't know how their school is, but we know how our school is.
Right, that's true. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I mean, the school, as far as I'm concerned, is safe. You know, you have to be buzzed in. They can see you. You know, there's an armed resource officer. And when your suggestion about arming some teachers and getting them certified and all that stuff, now that makes sense, but they all laughed in the audience at it. Or, you know, the whole place laughed. And I mean, are they saying the teachers are too incompetent to be able to pass something like that and to you know.
And I have to take responsibility for that partially myself because, again, I thought that this was a meeting on school safety and a way to prevent this in our schools down the road. And I really wanted to come just pitch my idea, right? I didn't want to turn this into a debate, a gun control debate, which is exactly what this was. The sad part about that entire meeting is there was really only one outcome. There was only one acceptable answer, and there was only one solution that we were talking about. I happen to think that's a solution that won't work. And again, that's based on history. It's based on evidence. We've tried it, and it hasn't worked. So I think we need a backup plan is how I put this. Like I'll concede. I'll never concede in real life, but for the argument of this conversation and keeping our kids in school safe, I will give in and say we can make every gun outlawed tomorrow and take them away from everybody. I don't think that's going to work. We should have a backup plan, and they simply weren't interested. Unfortunately, as soon as I should have just pitched my idea, but after listening for a couple hours, like Jason said, I was hearing so much false information that I really felt the need to defend the Second Amendment and our rights a little bit before I tried to make my pitch for education in schools. What a crazy idea, right? I mean, I can't believe the teachers, they wouldn't even listen to that idea.
No.
Well, the other thing was when the Department of Education, she told her spiel, and we were talking about mental health, which was the next lady that spoke. They were saying, well, there's no statistics, only 3 to 5% of all shootings, mass shootings, have been done by a mentally unstable person.
I know, I found that hilarious.
And the lady before had said that the person that can carry this out has got to have some type of mental disconnect or something to perform something like this. So they contradicted each other, and it's like 3 to 5%.
That lady said that the Nicholas Cruz down in Florida was not mentally ill. So what's happening here, I think, is again we've got existing procedures, existing laws that aren't being enforced, and then the people who are not doing their jobs are then throwing that onto other people, right?
Yep.
The sheriff down there in Florida didn't want to report any students because of the federal funding that the school gets if they don't have any incidents, right? So there's a whole bunch of things that they should have implemented in there. When he killed pets and tortured cats, that's a crime. We could have took his gun away there. When he threw his mother up against the wall, that's domestic violence. There's a crime. We should have took her. And then the backlog of that is, again, because no one caught this young man and found him mentally incompetent, after the fact, they're going to say, well, he wasn't. You heard her. He was not mentally incompetent. Because they didn't catch it. He was obviously mentally
all the news stations
ill.
that night before I went down there had said in 2016 they tried to have him removed and committed somewheres for mental evaluation, but I believe it's called the Wade Baker Law in Florida wasn't in place back then.
Right. Well, and it's a slippery slope. We don't want to. I like the idea of not being forced into a mental institution. There's got to be some real something behind it. We can't force people to do that, right? There's got to be legitimate action to cause people to be committed. I like that idea myself, right? So it's it's a slippery slope. We live in a proactive society or a reactive society where we got to wait for somebody to do something, unfortunately, before we can do anything, especially take away their rights. We're talking about constitutional rights here. I think education, again, when I first started this whole pitch, my idea was to educate the students. But one thing that I really learned from this meeting is it's not just the students that need education. Our educators, I think, need a lot of education. You guys both have kids?
Yes.
In Mount Anthony schools?
I have
or
one
in the school
girl
district?
is a senior.
And let me ask you, I mean, are you satisfied with your schooling that your kids are getting? What's your perception?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No.
You're not. Well, that was pretty point.
Yeah.
I was going to give them credit. I think they don't do too bad. I think our kids are getting a pretty good education. If you look at the statistics, though, nationally, we score really low.
Really low. And I'm telling you right now, they're coming out of Mount Anthony and they can't even pass the entrance test to get into college, half of them. They have to take classes that don't even count toward their degree because they weren't taught the things they should have been taught.
Right. Well, and again, especially now we're going to relate that back to the issue of gun control and the safety meeting. because the kids that were up there, again, I felt for them, and I do think they were there speaking on their own free will, on their behalf, from what they know.
Right.
But they've been taught
Right.
incorrect things. Our teachers, and we're allowing this, are telling our kids incorrect information, and even forwarding it. Again, I had one educator, a self-proclaimed educator, very proud, and I'm sure she's very good at stuff, asked me about the fully automatic machine guns and how an 18-year-old can get one. That tells me that she doesn't know.
Right.
And she didn't want to hear my answer or my
Right.
response because it didn't go with her narrative. But the educators need to put the correct information in front of the students, and likewise the media does too, so we can make educated decisions and vote on this. Right? There was a lot of information.
And I went there with ideas about school safety, that I thought they were going to go over their safety plans, what they have in place, so that if anybody had ideas of changes or whatever to it, we could voice that, and it quickly turned. We don't really know a lot of the hardcore stuff of what they're doing for safety inside the school, because it went this other direction.
Right.
One thing I wanted to throw out there was, we were actually in Florida during the Parkland shooting. We were in Orlando, and we had met parents of some kids at the Pulse nightclub shooting a couple years ago, and we talked to them while we were down there. And the two friends that we went down to visit are school teachers in Florida. So immediately after the shooting on Valentine's Day, you know, it went statewide of different plans they're putting in place to try to debunk copycat people and stuff. And one of the things, like 2 days after, kids weren't allowed to have backpacks in school.
Right.
Because that was a way to
Bring it in.
to do stuff, you know, to do something. So what they did was they put policies in place. If they had a backpack, it stayed in school. It didn't go home. You took the books home to do work, you brought books back. That way it was easier for the people at the doors checking people as they came in to see just the books.
What they were doing.
So I mean, that's something that it changes the way people think, but they have a locker in school.
Right.
Once they deemed the lockers were safe, they could use a backpack in school, but if it left, it had to be inspected before it came back in.
Right.
So I mean, that's the kind of things I went there with, and then
Putting it up.
they didn't want to
And
hear that kind
again,
of stuff.
it's amazing. I think there was one outcome. Like I said, there was one answer. There was somebody, I forgot what state it was, but they just implemented a rule where the kids had to have clear backpacks and everybody had to wear a name tag. And boy, did the kids hate it. They don't like that idea at all, which is amazing to me. They'd rather take away everybody's Second Amendment right than even listen to it. The same with armed security. It's foolish to me that we don't have security at our schools. We protect our money, we protect our politicians, we protect our courts.
But see, we've had it in place here for years, for 20 years.
Right.
Right.
20 years ago, 30 years ago when I was in school, we had the sheriff's department on school. Back then it was Dwayne Knapp.
Right.
The kids all knew him. They respected it because you interact with him every day. He was armed. And then maybe 15 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago, they put this school resource officer in there, which was an armed police officer from Bennington Police Department.
Right.
So it's been there in place, and not even, you know, nobody really makes a deal about it.
Right.
Because it just
Works.
was normal every day. He was there to help bridge the gap between law enforcement and maybe some at-risk juveniles.
Right.
But in case something happened, he was there in place every day. He had an office right next to the principal's office.
Gotcha. And you're law enforcement, right, or act?
I was 16 years.
What's your take on arming the teachers? What do you think of that
Well,
idea?
it's definitely something that's not just let's throw it in there. You know, and that's what the lady was, the crowd, I should say. If you watch this video of the other night, as soon as they mentioned it, it's the craziest idea ever.
Right.
Well, if you think about it, there's a lot of people that use government money to go to college by enlisting in the military.
Right.
The GI Bill. So they have been trained to, some of them were sharpshooters or snipers or infantry, whatever they went into. They learned that before they went to college. So therefore they could be the ones that are already familiar with firearms to go through it. Florida had a waiting list of teachers that wanted to get on.
Well,
Texas was arming. I mean, I just heard
I
about
think
it
it's a
on the news.
personality thing too. There's certain people I think that are that are, I can't imagine going through that situation, right? You're in a school trying to teach and all of a sudden gunfire starts. That's a, you know, fight or flight is going to be it. And you really need someone in the position that's willing to step up and, you know, to fight.
So I mean, it's definitely not everybody saying, you know, this lady that walked up to me afterward, after the discussion the other night, she introduced herself. Came from England. She's like, I'm totally terrified of guns and stuff, but I respect that you kept it calm, discussed your point of view, and were willing to listen to us for 2 hours talk about stuff, stuff that we didn't know about. So it needs to be a two-way conversation. The same way with arming the teachers, you know, it would be a long process to figure out the criteria, the training, all that stuff.
I think it's pretty simple.
In reality, if they had a person on each floor, let's say, or whatever, it doesn't need to be made public who they are either, because they're like, oh, as soon as they know that teacher's got it, they can go to them and tackle them and take their gun.
Right.
Exactly. Well, that's why I like the idea of not knowing.
Not knowing.
I like the idea of just dropping a law that says any teacher that wants to concealed carry can. And again, I'll use the example as Mount Anthony. Let's say nobody at Mount Anthony wants to do that. This is a personal choice, right? We're not going to force anybody to carry a gun. That's not what we want.
Not at all.
Right? But the ones that do, let's say nobody does. I don't know that. The shooters don't know that. The people don't know that. So that alone, I think, is a deterrent, right? And how about if we actually had teachers? And again, I'm gonna take a little time. You guys get to listen to me rap a little here. About this hunter education idea, because I really think this is a sound solution. We're talking about updating curriculum and mandating, right? Part of a mandated school curriculum to learn, you know, I'm looking here. It's a standardized course. It's going to teach the history of U.S. fish and wildlife, the science of conservation, outdoor safety and survival, basic first aid, and then firearms education training, responsible ownership, use. I don't know how anybody can argue with those things. Those are, I think, things we should, every kid, you know, again, it's not about hunting, it's not about gun ownership. These are things our kids should know. Some of the public benefits, if we implemented hunter education, we would create a better understanding, obviously, of firearms and firearm safety. We'd reduce gun violence through education and training. And since the inception of hunter education in 1970, this is proven. Again, we've looked at gun bans, gun restrictions, and they never work in the United States. I don't even want to compare it to other countries. This, again, is a proven thing. We're going to teach and expand critical thinking, emergency situations for the students in the classroom and in the real world. We're going to qualify every Vermont citizen to safely own and operate a gun. That was one of the complaints. I want a license. I want a qualification for people before they own guns. Again, this doesn't mandate that they must, but now if they want to use their Second Amendment rights, they have the training to do so, right? We're going to add trained and qualified armed security at the schools. Again, these teachers that I'm talking about, hunter education instructor, have been trained by the state. This is state certified teachers to both teach and concealed carry and use firearms. So again, we've taken it out. Now we've got people that they're already here. They're already trained. We're going to educate the students again on outdoor survival, basic first aid, and critical thinking. I think that's awesome. Raise awareness and stimulate economic impact for our renewable natural resources for the future. That's a big one. The economic piece of this puzzle is giant, right? Our governor, Phil Scott, came up with the VORAC program, which is Vermont Outdoor Recreational Economic Collaborative, right? What a mouthful. But basically, we use our natural resources here in Vermont. In fact, they're very valued. 90% of our money is tourism, right? Travel and tourism. Natural resources play a role in that. We're going to raise awareness and stimulate the economic impact, like I said, increase outdoor-related job opportunities, expand economic growth and development for outdoor recreation. Again, giant for Vermont state. Create more conservationists, environmentalists within the state. Again, preserving our natural resources. This is what we want. We want to talk about climate control. We want to talk about the planet and animals. This course already has it. Curriculum's already standardized, right? All 50 states. And again, when I say that, like we're going to create more conservationists. We're going to create more hunters and fishermen and wildlife managers. If you follow that down the chain, like all these things, that increases money for fish and wildlife. What's fish and wildlife do with that money? They turn around and develop and protect more critical habitat, protect our planet more. So these things just filter right down through. We can buy and protect more wildlife, our fisheries, critical habitat, increase funding for Vermont Fish and Game. We're going to develop more land stewardship programs, more critical habitat, raise Vermont income through increased travel and tourism. Again, this filters right down through everybody, and it's going to build self-confidence, self-reliance. Jason, I know you're a hunter. What has hunting done for you as far as attributes in your life?
Well, one of the biggest things, the other night during this meeting, I had my 10-year-old daughter with me. We spend countless hours out in the woods, out fishing, and it's not video games.
It's a bonding factor.
I took her fishing a few years ago, and she's like, "Oh, there's no fish in this brook. There can't be fish." It was a little brook out somewhere, and she dropped her worm in, and it wasn't 30 seconds she had a bite.
And she got one.
And that hooked her.
Yeah, well, and that joy too, the bonding, and again, I'm talking about the attribute patience, respect. Respect is a big one we probably need in this world right now. Humility, right? I can't tell you how many times the white-tailed deer has embarrassed me, but we learn, right? We learn by doing that, and it's natural and it's outdoors. And again, for Vermont, this is what we're about. I think this is what we're about. This is our core for being a Vermonter. And again, why hunter education? Why would I pick such a thing? Because it's established. Everything is established with hunter education. This is the forefront of firearm safety. It's already accepted in all 50 states and throughout the world. So what a better thing, and it's proven since the 1970s all the way up through that it saves lives. Funding is a big issue too. How do we pay for all this stuff? Again, through the Pittman-Robinson Act, 1937, we have federal money in place for this already. It was revised again in 1970. What a year for conservation and everybody. But in 1970, they mandated hunter education. That's the inception. Again, so it was revised and allocated on state levels. So now we have this in place already, state and federal, for funding. Teachers, again, teachers are in place. The hunter education instructors come with the certifications. They're trained and ready to go. Scheduling, I think this fits beautifully. Another problem when implementing more curriculum is where do we put it? In defense of the teachers, they've got a full schedule, man. They got a lot of stuff to teach our kids. But I think if you put a half year of physical education, a quarter year of health, and a quarter year of conservation, it fits in beautiful.
Well, actually, I've got a 16-year-old stepdaughter, and when she was in middle school a couple years ago, they had a course they had to take called sustainability, and they were planting the gardens. And that all kind of relates back to your natural resources.
Sure.
In some way, shape, or form. She didn't realize it, but learned some of that. So when she has no desire to hunt or anything, but my 10-year-old wanted to take the hunter safety course, so my wife and her says, well, why don't we take it too? So it was a whole family thing.
Right.
And she passed it with 100%.
More bonding time too.
And she doesn't have any desire to hunt, but she'd already learned a lot of this stuff in school and didn't even know it. So the curriculum's there. It's just the firearm safety part that would need to be plugged in somewhere.
Right. Well, and again, for the hunter education, firearm safety is in there. That's a whole course. And again, this doesn't force anybody to buy a gun. We're talking basic rules. I don't point a gun at a human being. Treat every gun like it's loaded. Know your target and what's beyond, right? How do we store firearms? How do we transport firearms? Again, whether you use one or decide to purchase one in the future, beside the point. For young kids, what happens? If you see you back away, you find an adult, these are things that we should be telling our kids, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Yep,
Right?
definitely.
And again, being politically correct is a big piece of this, and I want to be perfectly clear that this isn't a pro-gun or an anti-gun course that I'm talking about. This is about education, right? It's standards set up. Again, the International Hunter Education Association, a world-renowned group as far as the firearm, and then It's standard practices in law, right? We're talking about the North American conservation model as set up by the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So these are all things that are here, things that are, well, how come we're not even utilizing them? And even worse, how can I get thrown out of a safety meeting for schools for trying to talk about education? Baffles me. It baffles me.
Well, that, and you only got 10 minutes at the very end.
Right.
I mean, the whole meeting went through and everybody got equal time to talk and all that. And then there was like 10 minutes for the other side.
Yeah, it went really smooth when they were all
Yeah.
on the same page.
But even the moderator had said, "Oh, well, I think I'm going to have one or two more questions. It's been kind of uncomfortable in here for the last 10 or 15 minutes." Why, if he was a moderator that was supposed to hear and moderate a discussion, why was it uncomfortable?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if there was a time limit too. I almost felt like we were, and again, pressured out of there. And I don't know if it was just because of the contacts or if it was, the meeting's over, like our time here is done. We're going to have a public meeting. We're still debating now as far as location and time. I'm setting it up, but we'll make announcements where the public can. Your brother had an awesome suggestion. He was talking about, instead of building more police stations all over the country, why don't we combine them? Have one building with our schools and our police station in it. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
I mean, that would cut down
Yeah.
on school shootings for sure.
What about
Right.
deterrent? too?
The drug issue, there's so many other, again, benefits that come with that. That was an idea that wasn't going to be heard. The clear backpack,
Right.
I don't know. I think that'll actually work. I like the name tag. I like the
Yeah.
secure.
Yeah.
What else do you guys have for ideas? Any that we've covered? There's only so much we can do
Right.
too, right?
Right. Right.
The bad part of this, and I'll tell everybody straight up, no matter what we do, if we implement my hunter education idea or no matter what happens, we are never going to solve this. Never.
No.
There's always going to be crazy people. That's really what we want to ban, is insane people, right? And
Well,
violence.
Albany High has, because they had the race riots in the 70s, and because they were busted in, the whole segregation deal, and they locked down the whole school, they got armed guards, and they put metal detectors on the one entrance.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. Again, the problem I think is every time the bell rings, every door in the building opens up, and again, if I'm crazy and I want to do something, I'm going to get in. I'm going to find a way. We can't stop it, but I think again, if that happens, I'd like to have somebody on site to try to
Right.
take care of it
Right.
promptly. We don't talk too much on the media. We're already back at Parkland. We didn't talk about the one that happened in Maryland, where an armed
Yeah.
person stopped and saved who knows how many lives, right? But yeah, I'm for that.
And on that the day after it happened, or no, day it happened, 8 o'clock in the morning, I went home at noontime, flipped the news on. There was a little blurb about it, and the guy came on and said that it's unknown at this time, but it may have been a domestic type situation. But this armed security guard, or deputy, whatever he was, saved, possibly countless lives. But now they're trying to say, well, it was targeted because it was only after that one person.
Right.
But what's to say if somebody tried to struggle with him or confront him that it wouldn't have been a lot more?
And they don't.
It was stopped at that point.
Yeah, and they don't know because it was stopped. That's
Yep.
exactly. I mean, I think that was a good story, right? That's hopefully how they.
Very little
Unfortunately, they
coverage.
still, somebody died in that situation was never good, but it's better than 17 people dying, right? When just the bad guy goes.
So one other thing I got to throw out there, that I wrote it on the card like they said to, and they never brought it up. The three children, whatever they were, that they had from the other schools, this affects us. One of them claimed she was from Connecticut and moved here,
Right.
at Burton. And I live in fear every day of going to school. But then a little later on, well, statistically, I'm out of the statistics because it's not going to happen. Why don't they band together and put that kind of energy behind the opioid issue right now? Because every person in that school knows somebody that is either overdosed or has a problem. If they put that kind of energy into that,
Yeah.
what kind of mountains could they move?
Well, and again, I'm gonna blame education because we've talked about this before. on other shows, but guns are a non-issue. If you look at we should be celebrating how incredibly safe firearms are. If you look at there's 300 million guns in the United States, and we're killing less than 5,000 people. Unfortunate and horrible for those 5,000 people, and yes, we can and should do better. But compare that to anything: bicycles, space heaters, cars, football, you name it. I mean, there's a lot better places we can spend our time and money
The
and
issue
resources.
is there, our representatives are representing us just sent out an email yesterday stating how the statistics are flawed and it's way more than what they say, because they're counting in all of the suicides and all the other gun-related issues. Their statistics are flawed.
Yeah, well,
Right.
it's not a gun issue; it's a society issue, and the first thing we got to do is change society. We need ideas to actually work long term on society, and we've all talked off camera, and everybody in this conversation ends with it's family. This is a family issue and the breakdown of society, and we got to start doing more with our kids and paying attention. And we're out of time, unfortunately, but I thank you guys both for coming. I think it was productive. This is an open invite for anybody, either side. I want to hear everything. Please get a hold of me if you'd like to talk on this discussion, school safety, and something, doing something about it. Get a hold of me. Look me up on Facebook, however you got to. Check in next time, and we'll hit again. Thanks.